All right, so last week I did the books from 2020 that I still need to read, like a short little TBR of that I'm going to keep in the back of my head for throughout the next couple years. And today I wanted to tier rank all the books that I've read that were published in 2020 because I thought that could be like useful to people who are like, what were the books that I missed in 2020? Which ones should I be reading? And I looked to see how many books from 2020 I'd read. I figured it would be a fair number. Didn't know if I expected 35. On this list, we've got literary fiction, we've got historical fiction, we've got sci-fi, we've got fantasy, we've got stuff that defies genre. There are novellas, there are novels, there's young adult, there's adult. I have a whole bunch of stuff that came out in 2020, and I figure we're going to do a tier ranking. I don't know how long this will be. I hope it will be less than an hour, but it's probably going to be more than 30 minutes. You guys know, I don't. I'm at the start of this video. But I think this is just going to be a fun, chatty time because I know I love watching when people talk about all the things they've read in X, so I can really have my TBR open and figure out what I need to get to. So let's set up this screen recording and go. So as you see at the top, we have all-time fave. Below that, highly recommend. Then I have great. Then we have good or fine. I think this is going to encapsulate all my 3.5 star sort of reads. And then we have not for me. I'm not going to tell you what I rated it, but it's just not my thing. So let's start with a sequel, A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. This was the sequel to An Absolute Remarkable Thing. I have a review for that duology. I really like it. I think I'm going to put this in great, or should I highly recommend? I mean, I highly recommend the first book, which can work as a standalone, and if you have read the first book and liked it, then read the second book. Just know that it's a full cast. It's like the first book is one point of view, and the second book is in several point of views, so just keep that in mind. Black Sun, I'm going to put this in good, high end of good. It could be upgraded once the sequel comes out in 2022. This is by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a pre-Columbian era America-inspired fantasy world. Lots of really cool world building, and there were some characters I really loved, but I didn't like the execution of the ending. And I need more to really solidify what I think of this first book, because it's very much a first book in a series sort of thing. I do love the cover, though. Cast. All right, I'm going to put this in highly recommend with a caveat that this is not the book you pick up when you are already pretty well read in nonfiction around race. This is a very good introductory work, though, and I think it's really important if you want an accessible work that really highlights some of the systemic problems. It has a great audiobook narrator with Robin Miles, and it's also just relatively pretty digestible in its writing style because the author is a journalist. So I highly recommend it if it's your first foray. If you have read a lot of nonfiction, though, in this area, I'm not saying you can skip it, I'm just saying it's not as important for you. This highly recommend is not for you, I guess. Ooh, Clap When You Land. This one is great. This is a contemporary young adult written in verse. I listened to the audiobook. We have two narrators. These are two sisters who didn't know that they were sisters. Their father had two lives, and their father passes away in a plane crash, and that's how they meet. And you kind of get to look at the differences in lifestyle in New York City versus Dominican Republic and the different situations that they are dealing with because of that. So you have one that's diaspora Dominican Republic, one who lives in the Dominican Republic but doesn't get some of the privileges that her other sister gets in the United States with her citizenship. They're both on the edge of getting to college, and what does that mean for them? And then they're dealing with the grief of, their father who they loved having these other lives, and what does that mean? It's really good. I really enjoyed it, and I need to read more by that author. Next up, we have Dark and Deepest Red. This is another highly recommend. I'll put it a little bit above Cast because it's more of a universal highly recommend. This is my first Anna Marie McLemore. I really enjoyed it. It gave me the vibes that I get from Uprooted, from Winter Night Trilogy. It has this lyrical, lush writing that I just fell into. I loved the two timelines. This is kind of a retelling of the Dance of Plagues sort of thing. Is that what it's called? It takes place, I believe, in France. There was a dancing plague, and you follow a Romani family and a Mexican-American family in two different timelines, one that's 500 years ago, one that's today. And I loved the two timelines. I loved the friendships. I loved the mystery, but also the connecting with one's past. It was really good. And then we've got Dawn Shard. Okay, I'm just gonna put it in great, I guess. Like, because I don't feel like I can highly recommend it. Like, you must read it if you're reading the Stormlight Archive. It's not an all-time fave for me. Like, I enjoyed reading it, but it's just a novella in the Stormlight Archive. So I think that's where it goes for me. But I guess if you read the Stormlight Archive, you have to read it for the reveals, especially if you love the Cosmere. But if you're anyone else, no, it's fine. It's just great. So that's a weird one. Ooh, Deacon King Khan. This is the first one that's not for me. This is a literary historical fiction. I actually do love the writing of the author and would pick up something else by James McBride. But my issues, largely with the ending, I loved so much of it. It was so quirky and funny in its writing style at times. I loved the community. It was such good community work, bringing this part of New York City to life in the time period. I think it was the 60s. It was stunning. I just didn't like, it's called Deacon King Kong, that's a character. I did not like that character's representation and like the thematic messages that I was getting from his position, and I really, really didn't like the ending. A lot of people in my book club loved the ending, thought the ending was beautiful. I don't agree. I patently disagree on that ending, and that ending really did sour the rest of the book for me, even though the rest of the book is beautifully written. So there's a chance that you would disagree with me on the ending, so maybe pick it up, but yeah, no. This is Disfigured. I think it's something with fairy tales and fantasy and representation. I think this one's great as well. This one I think, though, also falls into the category of if you've been reading a lot on disability representation in media, this probably doesn't provide anything new, and you might find it a little repetitive at times. Those are some of the complaints some of my friends have. For me, this was my first foray into disability and literature, specifically in fantasy, and I was fascinated. I really liked it. I also did the audiobook, so anything repetitive, it was actually nice because I could just like zone out and I could then be brought back in, kind of podcast style. So its repetitive nature was almost a pro for me because of how I consumed it. But I could see if you were physically reading it or if you just have better audio retention than me, that could be annoying. But I also just loved learning the origins of some of the fairy tales because that also comes into it. The author also uses some of her life experiences because she has cerebral palsy, I believe. So she talks about her experiences with that growing up and paralleling that with some fairy tales and discussing that. I enjoyed it. So as a beginner piece, really liked it. I'm sure some people who are also well-read will also like it, but I just know that some people who maybe like I gave it 4 stars, but they gave it 3 stars. Those were kind of our differences. Now Driftwood. This is an all-time fave for me. I mean, is this shocking? Marie Brennan is like rapidly becoming a favorite author of mine. And this was very much right book, right time situation when I picked it up. I picked it up when I just had a weekend to read. I wanted something short. And I don't know about you guys, but the last couple years have been relatively like overwhelmingly hard in terms of like, oh my gosh, this world is not healthy. It's not doing well, and there's very little I can do as an individual. Like, I do what I can, and I participate in my government and things like that, but like, you feel so powerless, I guess. And this is a story about what happens after the apocalypse, after the world ends, and it was so hopeful for such, like, a kind of sad topic, right? And despite that bleak topic, you have these people who are still living even after the end of the world and telling their stories and holding on to their cultures. And it's a beautiful novella. I loved the narrative structure. I love how Marie Brennan writes people. So yeah, that's why it's an all-time fave for me. Each of Us a Desert, also an all-time fave. I need to upgrade my rating on that. I think I gave it a 4-star when I finished it, but with how much I talk about it and how much I love it and how I have a copy and I want to reread it, it needs to be upgraded to a 5-star. This one I have a review for. I love it. It's just such good coming-of-age fantasy in a post-apocalyptic world where this young woman is trying to figure out, what is my identity? What is true about the world that I am living in? And it's stunning. I love it. The writing style is amazing to listen to. I love the infusion of Latin American culture into this story. I love it so much. Finna is definitely a fine novella. I need to read the sequel because I've heard really good things. That came out this year. This one was good. I don't remember much about it. It's like a fake IKEA, and because of its setup, people can accidentally be in different worlds and they have to find a customer. See, I'm like really blanking on even the plot. I read it, I enjoyed it well enough, but this is what makes a book completely fine to me, is when like I can't hold on to it anymore. And I've only read it like a year and a couple months ago. I'm usually a little bit better about that with books. But it was a really like fine time, and if any of that premise sounds cool to you, you might have like a spectacular time with it, because that idea might just be like your thing. But for me, it was just like an adventure story that I don't remember later. I think it could have been a better novel. That's like, I have that definition of, should this have been told as a novella or short story or a novel, and I think this one could have been better as a novel. Hamnet. This one's another highly recommend. The more I think about Hamnet, the more I'm like, yes, more people are going to need to read this and would really like it. It's, I think, just one of those books that would work really well for a large, wide range of audiences. Like, we all know about Shakespeare and have that curiosity about the man behind the plays. Like, this doesn't provide nonfiction answers, but it's really interesting to postulate. It also has a compelling story that explores grief, but also a beautiful lyrical love story. It's great. I really like it. House of Earth and Blood. This one's great for me. Cannot universally recommend this. I will say, if you like Sarah J. Maas, you will like this book. If you don't like Sarah J. Maas, you will not like this book. I can definitively say that. It's my favorite main character that she's written. Bryce is my favorite of all of her main characters. It is not surprising. It is completely comfortable in how predictable this Sarah J. Maas book is, which is fine. Like, that's why I read her works. Like, her works for me are purely, I want the formula. Like, that's what I want her to do. Like, if she ever wants to do something else, that's fine, but that's why I pick up her works. I want to have the same, like, character going through trauma main character, and then, like, the weird male character that's, like, the blend of, like, her two other male characters. Like, all of her characters remind you of each other at some point, and I'm totally fine with that. Incendiary. Okay. So this one's a highly recommend, but again, with like a minor caveat that you want to be reading young adult and you like young adult tropey goodness. And if you like friends to enemies to lovers at all, I would pick this up. If you like a rebellion story, if you like evil kings that you have to overthrow, if you like found family, if you like someone who thinks that they are a monster, like if any of those things are your tropes, I pick it up. I found it so comfortable. It's also very short. It's like 300 pages. The first 100 pages flew by in the most fun way. I was so on the edge of my seat, I could not put it down. So if any of that's your stuff. Now, if you're like, I'm done with young adult fantasy, I cannot handle tropes, I just like want something more grand and epic in my fantasy, then yeah, maybe skip this one. Interior Chinatown. This is also highly recommend. I think actually it might be my highest. Let's get in there. Oh my god, move around. I don't know why sometimes this tier ranker is so hard to use. So Interior Chinatown is a playwright sort of thing. It's written in an interesting format, and it is a commentary, a satire on what are the roles an Asian American can play, both say in a show or in society. And it's very fantastical and ethereal, magical realism playwright. And I loved it. I read it in an afternoon. I started reading it and I just spent 4 hours reading this, and I want to reread it. Actually, you can kind of see it off camera unless I've cropped myself. In that case, you can't. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's almost an all-time fave. If I ever reread it, I'm sure it will be. But I highly recommend it, especially like if you're ever looking for something that's format different. Like, it was such an interesting way to read this type of thematic story. And it still has parts that are in prose, parts that are in playwright, and the parts that are in prose are what you would expect from like a historical fiction or things like that. It taught me things that I didn't know. I really, really appreciated it. Love After the End. This is good. It's not the strongest short story anthology I've ever read. Like, for example, I can barely remember any specific stories from it, but it wasn't bad at all, and I buddy read it with a friend, and that was fun. I'm glad it exists. I just kind of, for me, this was the type of anthology where a lot of the stories were good, but relatively forgettable for me. I don't know. They felt more like, take a long story, make it shorter. I don't know if that makes sense. Regardless, it was very good, but it wasn't, for me, a memorable experience, which is kind of where this tier is. But if you are looking for short stories by indigenous authors about like a utopia world after the apocalypse instead of an apocalypse, I would pick it up because you will find new indigenous authors to read from, which was a good thing for me when I read this collection. Mexican Gothic. This is also one that's kind of like just good for me. Nothing wrong with it. I don't think about it a lot. It was fun while I read it and exactly fun while I read it. This is kind of your Gothic thriller story. You know, you got a creepy old house, you got a spunky female protagonist, very Alfred Hitchcock, and I think it does those elements really well. It also thematically reminds me of horror things like Get Out, which is really interesting. So yeah, there's nothing bad about it, just for me, it doesn't stick with me, which if you need a book that sticks with you, maybe you don't pick that up, but maybe if you really want spooky house, Gothic thriller with a spunky female protagonist, pick it up. It's good for that. It's exactly good for that. It delivers on that package. And now we've got Migrations. This is also another highly recommend, especially if you like kind of psychological thrillers, maybe. I don't know. I'm still thinking about this one. This one's like a very new read for me, even though it's been out since 2020. You follow Franny, who's following the last tern migration from the Arctic to the Antarctic, and you're wondering, why is she doing this? I mean, we are living in a world now in this story where most animals are extinct. We don't have wild animals anymore. But why this migration? And unpacking why Franny does what she does and her past is fascinating. You also have really cool crew dynamics on a boat. The atmosphere is stunning. Like, if you need a book for winter, you want to feel cold, feels very cold. I think this would be like a great atmospheric winter read. Once Upon an Eid. All-time fave. I need to buy myself a copy. I loved this short story anthology when I read it last year. It's a middle grade short story anthology about the holiday Eid, which I didn't know much about before I read this, but it's essentially a large celebration similar to Thanksgiving or Christmas, and you are seeing these children in different family lives and different parts of life, and it has that childhood resilience, which I require at times, because we've all had those holidays as a kid where it wasn't perfect. You know, you didn't have the right family members there. You didn't get to be in the place you wanted to be. You didn't get to do what you wanted to do, but it still turned out okay. You know, and like you get those vibes in the story. Some of the stories made me tear up. Some of them just brought me so much joy. And sometimes I need that, and there's such short little things. So like for the holiday season coming up, if you just need that, like especially last year when holidays were just all over the place with, you know, should you go visit this person? Can you have a large family dinner if that's what you were used to? I really, really loved that anthology, and it brought me a lot of strength because the resilience of children is strong. Phoenix Extravagant. This is another good but fine, which I know is surprising to people who are like, Angela, but Nine Fox Gambit's like your favorite thing, Yoon Ha Lee, and I agree. But this is not my favorite thing by Yoon Ha Lee. I think it's cool. I like Jebi. Jebi's a non-binary painter, and all Jebi wants to do is art, and things happen, and Jebi's not allowed to art as much, or arts in a different way. There's a pacifist, like, war dragon who's really interesting. Gotta love that. And honestly, it would have been great if it weren't for the ending, but the ending's just so weird. Like, it's not a bad ending, technically, but it's a choice. Like, it's a choice. If you've read the ending, we should discuss, because, like, if you understand it and like it, please. But it's a standalone fantasy, so that's always fantastic, and I think it's very good. Rhythm of War, I feel like this is no surprise, all-time favorite, potentially my favorite in the Stormlight Archive. I have a spoiler vlog if you're new here and you also like Stormlight Archive. I've got you. I got a 3-part vlog where I'm like, release week, just diving into this book. It was fantastic. Riot Baby. This one's, I need to reread this one. So I'm going to put it at the upper end of good, because it does fall into that trap. Well, no, it's great. It's low end of great. I was just thinking of its format. I'm like, no, I actually like the format this story's told in. I think I just read it at the wrong time, and I need to reread it for myself and like my own personal rating. But this is the story of this family unit and a baby that was born during, I think it was a specific riot in LA, but I can't remember which one. And there's a lot of rage. This is an African-American family, and the sister has some magical powers. Think of like Jean Grey sort of powers. And the main focus, though, is on the brother and how he moves through life and what's happening to him and where he ends up. And it's an interesting look at that situation. It's very much more speculative. Like, I don't know if I would feel comfortable putting it into the fantasy or sci-fi category. It's such a genre blend. The genre is used to try and get the themes across, and I think a really good way. It's just that when I read it, it's a novella, and don't be fooled. Like, I thought it was like, oh, it's like 100 some pages. This will take me a couple hours. It's not a book you should read in one sitting. It is hard to read in one sitting. There's a lot of heavy stuff in there, but it was really good, and I'm excited for his new, I think, novel next year. It's called Goliath. Can't wait. Run to Earth. This one I'd say is good. I've read different historical fiction that I like more, but I liked listening to this one. I think it was the format that makes this not great for me, and I think a lot of people agree. Each section's different characters, but it's all loosely connected, and you're looking at the fallout of the American use of Laos in the Vietnam War. And you're following these characters who were part of helping, and some people get to go to France, and like you're following the situation, and because you keep jumping to new characters, like the first section you follow one character for like a third of the book, and then you don't see that perspective again, and you're not prepared for that, so it felt like a short story collection about this thing and didn't feel like a novel, and I think if I knew that, I would like it more. So that formatting was hard for character connection. But I learned a lot, and I thought it was very well written. There was definitely a moment that I was at work while listening to it that I had to stop, and I was like, woof, that was a lot. So it was interesting. Didn't actually know a lot about how we used Laos during that confrontation. Seven Devils is perfectly fine. I've already decided I'm not going to finish the duology. I just don't love the plot that much to keep going, and I don't want to reread it before the sequel comes out next year. It's totally fine. Like, if you like Red Rising, if you like Throne of Glass, I think it has elements of each of those done pretty well. It has some great found family, very diverse cast. Just like, I don't know, it wasn't quite as fun as I wanted it to be. Like, for just a book that I could tell was just meant to be like a fun adventure romp, it didn't quite give me everything. And like, these intelligent characters do some really bananas things that I'm like, you have led me to believe that you are smart. And you made that decision? We have a whole Space Sirens live about that one. Oh, Shorefall. Shorefall's great. I like Shorefall. Actually, I'll put it there. That seems better. Shorefall's the sequel to Foundryside. I think I like Foundryside a hair more, but Shorefall was so fun. I was instantly into it. Like, I instantly was back with this character set, and I was like, oh yeah, this is great. It felt like reading an action movie. Like a fantasy action movie. I had such a blast. For that reason, though, it's not like really a favorite because it was just really just a pleasurable experience, which is what Robert Jackson Bennett does best for me. Like, he really is like my like pleasure read for fantasy. Like, when I just want those quick bingeable fantasy books, he really provides those for me. Oh, Shuggie Bain. Let's not dwell on this. Not for me. I relate too closely to what the character goes through to be able to read this book without inducing an anxiety attack on myself. I think the author purposefully chose to go into all of the most traumatic experiences of Shuggie's life without showing anything else, which I think is unrealistic. There's plenty of life, especially like I went through very similar trauma. And when he did choose to give us the light, it was purposefully to smush us into the dirt. And I didn't like being emotionally manipulated in that way as someone who's gone through similar things. And I mean, the author, it's very autobiographical, so I'm not here to tell the author how to tell his story. But I didn't like that. I didn't enjoy it, didn't appreciate it, so it's not for me. Bone Shard Daughter, this is great. This is a good time. I'm very excited to read The Bone Shard Emperor next month. This is the first book in a fantasy trilogy. Really cool world. It kind of reminds me of the islands in the Pacific Ocean in terms of world building. And like, there's like kind of implied end of the worldness happening, which is like one of my buzzwords. Multi-point of view. There was just only one point of view I didn't care about that much, but I liked the rest of them. Had really interesting genre blending. If you like Foundryside, I think you would like this one. And not just because the magic systems overlap, but also the density of the prose is very similar and the pacing is similar, in my opinion, where it's just like, not breezy, but like it's a similar weight I don't know if that makes sense. Like in board games, we talk about the weight of a game, like not how heavy it is, but like the complexity. And I think they just both have a similar sentence structure, complexity and density and world building density. You know, like there's a lot going on, but it's kind of accessible and info dumped in appropriate ways. So I feel relatively confident in saying that comparison. Oh, Burning God. This one's also not for me. Oof. I like the first two books. I have a whole series review, spoiler free. Like I don't talk about the plot whatsoever. My issues are just that everything I was always having minor nitpicks for in the first two books were like on display in the third book, which is just like, hello. I don't know. It was the plotting. The plotting was really not my style, and it could have benefited from an additional point of view for the third book, which in the second book we had more point of views, but in the third book it's primarily Rin. And I don't mind Rin. I think Rin is a well-crafted character who does things, I think, that make sense based off where she is and what she does. I don't know. It was really long. And there is a whole part that I was like, what was the point? And so when you're a long book that I'm trudging through, and then I get to the end of a thing, and I'm going, what is the point? And I should have DNF'd it. Like, I finished it because I only had a couple 100 pages left, and I was like, well, I could have just looked up the spoilers for the ending and felt just as complete as I do now. So unfortunately, those are my unpopular Burning God opinions, but lots of people like it, so obviously, I am in the minority. The City We Became, all-time fave. I love N.K. Jemisin. You know, you've seen my N.K. Jemisin reading guide. I love her work. This one is so fun. I love every character in it. I still think about them. I still think of Bronca. I still think of Manny. So, premise is a city comes to life, and there are several boroughs in New York City, and they each get an avatar, a human. And what happens is it's a normal person going through life, like just on their commute, and suddenly they're the powers of the avatar of that neighborhood. And they have to come together to stop a big bad. And there's a lot of confrontation because they don't all get along. And it's super fun. And I loved everything about it. I know some people say that if you don't care about New York City, you might not like it. I mean, I wouldn't say that I love New York City, but I guess I do love cities and the cultures you find in the cities. But I also just love N.K. Jemisin's writing. Like, I would read her grocery list. I say this all the time, and people think I'm kidding, but I'm not. I just love how she wordsmiths. It's my thing. So, really loved that last year. Empire of Gold. This is also an all-time fave. The Davabad trilogy is a real solid fantasy. I am excited to reread that in a few years. It's like the type of fantasy that reminds me that I like reading fantasy. Great multi-POV, you know, it's just a good time. I mean, if you like the Davabad trilogy, you should probably read the third book that came out in 2020. It's Middle Eastern fantasy. You have a con artist, female main character. You've got an ancient warrior brought back from his past. You've got a bookworm warrior prince. I'm just saying. And there's politics ensued. There's magic. It's a fun time. And The Empress of Salt and Fortune. That one's great. That is a novella that's a novella. That could only be told as a novella, and I appreciate that. And yes, I still have to read When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. I am going to get to that eventually. But really, really solid. House in the Cerulean Sea. For me, it's like high end of good. It's relatively forgettable for me. It's very cozy. It was great when I read it because I was reading it while I was moving last year, and I needed a book that was just like easy and like kind of predictable. And it's like a contemporary book. It reminds you of like a contemporary movie, feel-good movie. Like, it's not surprising. It has a lot of warm feelings. It's basically orphanages take in magical creatures, and we live in a world that's kind of like the parts of X-Men in the comments where like everyone's going to be registered, and then you treat the registered people different from the normal people. And say we live in that society, so now there's these orphanages with all these magical children. And so we have this guy Linus who's very by the book, and he never changes his routine, and, you know, classic contemporary curmudgeon-y character. And he has to go to this orphanage that's very special because it has very special children, and his heart melts, and he gets feelings. That's The House in the Cerulean Sea. It's perfectly good to find. Like, I mean, I think I gave it 4 stars. It was a good time. Night Watchman. I highly recommend The Night Watchman. I highly recommend a lot of Louise Erdrich. She's just fantastic, as I say in many videos, at community building. Like, her sense of space and time and community is so strong in the text, and I love reading about all her characters. They're just, they're awesome. I really love them. But I highly recommend it. This takes place in the 50s, I believe, and it's an attempt at this tribe to prevent the government from basically, I forget the word for it, but basically what they would do would take away funding that they desperately need. So basically effectively screwing them over, but trying to make it sound like we're giving you independence, sort of thing. I forget the word for it. Emancipation. I think that's the word for it. But it's more than that. It's really just following this time period with these people who are going just through also life and what that means. There's a lot of coming of age. There's just a lot of family growth and change. It's fantastic. Ooh, The Space Between Worlds. I also highly recommend this one. I think I'm going to put this one there. I think The Night Watchman deserves to be over here. I think that's right. The Space Between Worlds is by, that was a sleeper story for me. So I think a lot of people who pick this up and are expecting something action-packed will actually be quite disappointed. This is actually a much more character-driven story than I expected when I picked it up. You have multi-dimensions. You can only go to the multi-dimensions if you're dead in most of the dimensions, and our main character, Kara, is dead in 300 plus. Mainly because in most of these dimensions, which are very similar to each other, they only have slight changes, she is from the lower class economy side and is always in a situation where she is most likely to die just based off the luck of being born into the family she was born into. Lots of commentary on class. Like, the thematic nuance that I ended up taking away from this story after I finished it was so high. I talk about that a lot in my review, where I was, not expecting the execution of these themes to be so good, especially for a debut. So for me, it really resonated. I think it's fantastic. Now, not everyone likes it. I think especially if you expect it to be this action-packed, fast-paced thing. And if you don't like Kara, she's the main character, and a lot of it is exploring her relationships with these people and the world. But man, did I not have a great time with that one. And then Upright Women Wanted, I'm also going to put this one as good. Around Finna. I mean, I don't think about it much. I like Sarah Gailey's Echo Wife, which came out this year, infinitely more than Upright Women Wanted. But if you want, Handmaid's Tale cowboy sort of story with really good LGBTQ representation, go for it. It's pretty fun. So hopefully this was helpful in showing you some of the 2020 releases that maybe you have gotten to, have not gotten to, if you agree or disagree with me. I just thought this would be fun to do, and maybe useful. Otherwise, let me know what 2020 releases that you think I should have my eye on based off the last video and this one. And I don't know. Otherwise, for an emoji, I mean, is there a 2020 emoji or a New Year's emoji? I don't know. Leave the party emoji if you can't find the other one. And if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.